Imagine buying your dream home, a luxurious million-dollar mansion in an upscale neighborhood, only to receive a letter that says, "I'm watching you. I know your children's names, and one day, I will take them." Chilling, right? But what if I told you this wasn't a prank? What if the letters kept coming, growing more personal, more terrifying, and more impossible to ignore? And what if, years later, the sender was still out there watching? This is the bone-chilling true story of 657 Boulevard, a house that became a nightmare, a family that lost everything, and a stalker who was never caught. But here's the scariest part. They could be watching right now. In the summer of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus finally secured what they considered their perfect home, a luxurious 6-bedroom estate in the affluent community of Westfield, New Jersey. Priced at $1.3 million, this property was more than just a house. It was a symbol of achievement. Situated on Boulevard, one of the most prestigious streets in town, it was the kind of address that signified success. However, what was once a dream location would soon become synonymous with something far more sinister. Just 3 days after finalizing the purchase, the couple had yet to move in. Eager to begin making the space their own, Derek visited the house alone to handle minor renovations and repaint the walls. While immersed in his excitement, he decided to check the mailbox for the first time. What he found would change everything. Inside the mailbox was a small, neatly sealed envelope addressed to the new homeowners. The letter began in an oddly formal tone. "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. 657 Boulevard has been the focus of my family for decades. Now, as it nears its 110th anniversary, I have been tasked with keeping watch over it, just as my grandfather did in the 1920s and my father in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what secrets it holds? Why are you here? I will find out." The message quickly turned unnerving. The writer referenced Derek's vehicle, a Honda minivan, and detailed the presence of contractors working on the house over the past few days. Then, chillingly, it mentioned the couple's children. "I believe I counted 3. One day I will learn their names. I will call out to them, and I will take them from you." A deep sense of unease gripped Derek as he read the words. This wasn't just a cryptic welcome, it was a calculated threat. Someone had been watching them, tracking their every move. His stomach tightened as he clutched the letter, immediately locking every door and window before racing back to his family's temporary residence. The police were called that night. Upon reviewing the letter, officers were perplexed. Was it a prank? A warning? Or something far more dangerous? They asked Derek if he had any known enemies, but he was just as bewildered as they were. The letter had no return address, only a chilling signature. "Who am I? I could be someone who walks past your house every day. I could be watching from a car as I drive by. I could be a neighbor. I could be anyone, and you will never know." Signed, The Watcher. Though the police assured Derek and Maria that they would investigate, the couple couldn't shake the overwhelming dread that had settled over them. That very night, despite the late hour, they reached out via email to the previous owners, the Woods family. Had they ever received such letters? The Woodses responded the next morning. 3 days before moving out, they had indeed received a letter. However, it hadn't been overtly threatening. It merely expressed gratitude for taking care of the house and assured them that it would be watched over moving forward. The letter had also been signed The Watcher. They had dismissed it as a bizarre but harmless note and discarded it. Derek and Maria, however, were taking no chances. They decided to delay their move, opting instead to visit the property occasionally to oversee renovations while still living at their old residence. But the nightmare was far from over. 2 weeks later, Maria arrived at the new house with the children. She spotted another envelope in the mailbox, identical to the first. Without even opening it, she instinctively dialed the police. When she finally read its contents, the letter was even more disturbing than the last. "Welcome again to 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy. I have been watching as you bring in your belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have you found what lies within the walls yet? In time, you will. The letter then mentioned the children by their nicknames and in birth order, details only someone in close proximity could have overheard. A horrifying realization dawned on Maria. Whoever was writing these letters was near enough to listen in on their private conversations. And then, the most terrifying part, is she going to be an artist? I saw her using her easel yesterday. The easel in question was placed in a back room, obscured by trees and barely visible from the street. The only way the writer could have seen it was by being directly on the property. The watcher was closer than they had feared. The letter concluded with a grim note. Do your kids go into the basement? If I were them, I'd be afraid. It is far from the rest of the house. And if they screamed, you wouldn't hear them. Who will be sleeping in the bedroom facing the street? I will know as soon as you move in. Then I can plan better. Panic set in. The Broadduses were no longer just disturbed. They were terrified. They had never even spent a night in their new home. Yet they felt they were already in danger. Weeks passed, and they remained unsure if they would ever move in at all. Then came the third letter. Where are you? The house misses you. It was unmistakable. The watcher wanted them there. During this time, Derek spoke with a neighbor, John Schmidt, who lived just a few doors down. John suggested that they look into the Langfords, an eccentric family living next door. The household consisted of an elderly matriarch and her adult children, the youngest of whom, Michael, was known for his unsettling behavior. He had a habit of wandering through people's yards and peering into windows, making the neighborhood uneasy. Derek relayed this information to the police, urging them to investigate Michael Langford. But the authorities had already questioned him. He denied any involvement, and without solid evidence, they couldn't take further action. However, the case took an unexpected turn when DNA was recovered from one of the envelopes. The results showed that the sample belonged to a woman. This revelation ruled out Michael, but suspicion then fell on his sister. Authorities discreetly collected a DNA sample from a discarded water bottle of hers, but the test revealed no match. With the Langfords officially ruled out as suspects, Derek Broaddus found himself spiraling into a state of paranoia and frustration. At first, his fear had been rooted in the unknown. What could happen to his family if they moved in? But as time passed and the police failed to identify the person behind the ominous letters, his emotions transformed into something far more volatile: anger. Derek could no longer tolerate the idea that a faceless tormentor had the audacity to threaten his children. He began pressuring the police, insisting that if they couldn't solve the case, he would. If you don't find out who's doing this, he told them, then I will. And when I do, you won't be dealing with a stalking case anymore. The authorities urged him to remain calm, assuring him that they were doing everything possible. But to Derek, their efforts weren't nearly enough. Determined to catch the watcher himself, he installed a high-tech surveillance system around the property, hoping to catch any suspicious activity. At night, he would sit in the dark, hidden behind windows, watching the mailbox for any sign of movement. His desperation led him to hire 2 former FBI agents to conduct a private investigation. He also enlisted a forensic handwriting analyst to study the letters, hoping to gain insights into the sender's identity. The only concrete conclusion: whoever wrote them was seething with rage. But beyond that, there were no significant leads. As Derek's obsession deepened, life continued moving forward, just not in the way the Broaddus family had planned. The sale of their previous home had been finalized, and the new owners were ready to move in. Left without a residence of their own, Derek, Maria, and their children had no choice but to move in with Maria's parents. Yet, despite not living at 657 Boulevard, they were still responsible for its mortgage, bleeding money every month for a house that had become a nightmare. Meanwhile, whispers began circulating in the Westfield community. The story of 657 Boulevard and its ominous letters hadn't been widely publicized, leaving residents to speculate why the Broaddus family was suddenly abandoning their newly purchased dream home. Some believed they were on the brink of financial ruin. Others suggested they had legal troubles. The more the rumors spread, the more the Broadduses found themselves ostracized. The people of Westfield, who once might have welcomed them, now treated them with suspicion. Realizing they had no choice but to sell the house, Derek and Maria listed it, initially pricing it higher than what they had paid to recoup the $100,000 they had poured into renovations. But no one showed interest. As time passed, they gradually lowered the price again and again until it reached a financial loss. Still, no buyers emerged. With each failed attempt, their frustration turned toward the Woods family, the previous owners. The Broadduses couldn't shake the feeling that the Woods family had misled them. After all, the Woodses had received a letter from the Watcher before selling the house, however harmless it may have seemed at the time. To Derek and Maria, the fact that the letter existed at all should have been disclosed before the sale was finalized. Feeling deceived, they filed a lawsuit against the Woodses, accusing them of withholding critical information that could have changed their decision to buy the property. Their legal team reassured them that, at most, a small news outlet might pick up the story. But what happened next was beyond anything they anticipated. The case exploded in the media. Within days, hundreds of journalists were contacting the Broadduses for statements. News vans crowded the front of 657 Boulevard. The eerie nature of the letters combined with the lawsuit had turned the Broadduses into unwilling celebrities in a real-life horror story. Overwhelmed, they made the difficult decision to leave Westfield entirely. Years passed, and the house remained unsold. Then, at long last, a family agreed to rent it. Though the rental income wouldn't even cover the mortgage, it was better than nothing. However, there was one non-negotiable clause in the lease. If the renter received a letter from the Watcher, they could break the contract immediately. 2 weeks after moving in, it happened. The Watcher struck again. The new tenants found a letter waiting in the mailbox. Unlike the previous messages, this one carried an even more ominous tone. "Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me. One of your so-called neighbors. Someone who pretends not to know who I am. Or maybe you do know, and you're just too afraid to say anything. My followers on Boulevard obeyed my orders. They carried out my mission. And together we saved the soul of 657 Boulevard. All hail the Watcher." The renters were shaken, but surprisingly, they chose to stay. They only requested that the Broadduses install more cameras, which they promptly did. Derek and Maria, however, were crushed. This wasn't over. Even after all the pain, money, and fear, the Watcher was still there. Eventually, the Broadduses realized they couldn't keep draining themselves financially. In 2019, they sold the house at a loss of $400,000. They just wanted to be rid of it. Before the sale was finalized, one final letter arrived. "You are despised by the house. The Watcher has won." Despite police investigations, private detectives, handwriting experts, and even forensic DNA testing, the Watcher was never identified. Theories abound, but none hold conclusive proof. Some believe Derek himself might have written the letters. He later admitted to sending anonymous messages to residents who had spread rumors about his family. He insisted it was only a retaliation tactic, an attempt to make them feel as paranoid as he had. But critics argue that perhaps he created the Watcher from the start. After all, in 2022, Netflix secured the rights to their story. Could it have been a years-long ploy to craft the perfect unsolvable mystery for a movie deal? On the other hand, would anyone put their own children through that kind of terror just for potential financial gain? Whatever the truth may be, the identity of the Watcher remains one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries in modern history. The Watcher won. The Broadduses fled, the house was cursed, and to this day, no one knows who sent those letters. Was it a jealous neighbor, a sinister game, or was something even darker at play? Whoever they were never caught, and that means they could still be watching, waiting, even now. What do you think happened? Was the Watcher real? Or was this all a twisted setup? Let us know in the comments. And if you love disturbing true stories, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because trust me, the next mystery will keep you up at night.